Jack Holt, thank you very much for being at AFI today. I wanted you to tell me a little bit about social media and the DoD. Particularly, you told me an interesting story about the war in Iraq.
Oh yes, yeah. Well, we got our start in the QDR 2006, and there was a comment or a bullet comment that was in the QDR 2006 Strategic Communication Roadmap to learn how to communicate in a 24/7 new media environment. And that's what we were charged to do. We were stood up to do that. And there was three of us to begin with. There's about 8 or 9 now. But it was, we had to figure out what was going on, how to work in this environment, and what were the dynamics that were going on. Because we had a problem when a guy in a cave gets more time on our news media than our own people do. General Petraeus can stand on the platform at the Pentagon and maybe get 2 sound bites, but yet Zawahiri gets up on, releases a tape from a cave, it gets up on YouTube, and everybody's playing it. So, how do we balance? What's up with that? How do we balance that? Well, we started the DoD New Media Initiative, a new media office. It's now transformed into the Emerging Media Office. So, we got our start there. Now, what you mentioned, the story in 2007, we were trying to figure out how to add value to the discussions that were out there. And I've been talking to bloggers and corresponding with them, trying to, asking them, how do I add value to what you do? And the 2 things they said were give us access and then make it linkable. Get it something on the net so that we can link to it. Because they work under the basic rules of debate. What's the authority of your source, the strength of your argument, and the power of your ideas. So with those 3 things in mind, we started. Well, we're DoD. We're the authoritative source. If they're going to be arguing about military affairs, let them argue from our original sources rather than what was written in the newspaper someplace. So interesting thing happened. This all kind of came about kind of converged in time in January and first part of February in 2007. Change of strategy was announced in Iraq. General Petraeus was confirmed and took charge in Iraq. And the first effort in that change of strategy happened. It's called the Battle on Haifa Street. Well, the interesting thing about that, the Battle on Haifa Street, they were geared up for it. They put some public affairs troops in there with the unit. They moved out. They had some good combat camera footage of, the battle lasted 3 days. So they had some good combat camera footage of the battle and the effects, what was going on, and the guys involved. They came back. They released that to the news media in Baghdad, which made the evening news cycle in this country. Then it made the next morning's news cycle, and then it was dropped from the news rotation as the press all rushed to cover the death of Anna Nicole Smith. Well, here was an event that was the first step. We were delivering what people throughout 2006. People were elected to Congress in 2006 on this change of strategy, and here it was. The change of strategy was in place, and now nobody cared. Well, yeah, they did care. There were a lot of people out there that cared. So we set up. I got a call from the folks at MNFI. What do we do? How can we do this? And I said, well, let's just set up a conference call. So we started a telephone conference call with. We had about, I think on the first call we had like 11 bloggers that dialed into this. Talked to Admiral Fox the first time, and then about a week later they talked to General Caldwell. But what they found was that these people were asked some very good questions. And General Caldwell, after his first blogger roundtable, said, no, this is something we're going to do for everybody. Every commander that comes from downrange is going to sit here and they'll do the Baghdad press conference, the Pentagon press conference. They'll talk to any reporter that wants to talk to them as part of their media engagement plan, but they're going to pick up that phone and they're going to talk to these bloggers because they ask some really good questions. They can be very specific questions and some very challenging questions, but they're very good and very fair questions. And we found that most of those commanders downrange wanted to talk to them. They just got involved in that conversation. And so it gave us the opportunity to engage in a conversational style with people who are writing about us. It was, and I call it the long tail of information. We're talking to fewer people at a time, but more people over time, and putting context to the headlines, putting context into that public debate, into the public sphere, so that whenever anybody wants to know about what's going on in Iraq, they can search it. They can search it online. This stuff's going to come up. It's there, and it's available. So we found that was very, very powerful.
So that was an example of using the social media, with the media, with the outside world. Fast forward to 2009, what are some of the examples of maybe social media used internally at the DoD?
Well, a couple of examples. There's several senior leaders, people like Admiral Stavridis at Southcom, people like Admiral Allen over at the Coast Guard, and I just asked General Oates, General Michael Oates, or Major General Michael Oates, who is the commander of the 10th Mountain Division in Iraq now. Excuse me, in Iraq now. I said, how do you, he has a blog. He started a blog. I said, now, why did you start that blog? How would you explain to other senior leaders what you get out of this? Why did you do this? He says, I need unvarnished information. And he says, I can get it through that blog. So I can pose a question, I will get answers. He said, while, some troops, especially, maybe sergeants and privates and specialists may not really want to tell me what I need to know face to face because it gets a little intimidating, they have no problem putting it on a blog. So I have the opportunity to exercise that leadership. I get unvarnished information, which is what I have to do my job. And I thought that was a very telling and very insightful statement.